Okay, now it's time for another installment of what has fast become the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail. My previous video, we talked about the buildup of what eventually became the Crawford versus Spence fight, to which James Everett responded. Anybody with objective eyes says Spence was weight drained before and during the Danny Garcia fight.
Oh, really?
Obviously, they didn't let him spare. His punch resistance was shot. His people sold him out for the payday.
Obviously, he says. What I obviously see is a guy trying to rewrite history, because following that Danny Garcia fight, nobody at the time was talking about Spence being weight drained.
Nobody was saying that.
And nobody was saying that he was shot. That his punch resistance was all gone?
Nobody was saying that after the Danny Garcia fight. Nobody was saying that after the Ugas fight. You likely weren't saying that. You're just pretending you were now. Seems like none of you guys decided that anything might have been wrong with Errol Spence Jr. up until the moment Crawford beat him. Then, oh, now he was weight drained. Now he was shot. Now you need an excuse to lean on for getting it so terribly wrong about that fighter. But here's the kicker. Say I'll be your Huckleberry, and I qualify your version of the event, that Errol Spence Jr. eventually became weight drained, and Errol Spence Jr. eventually became shot. Whose fault is that?
Whose bright idea was it to save Terence Crawford for last?
Because I remember Terence Crawford was pushing to make that fight. Bob Arum was pushing to make that fight, going as far as saying that he would be willing to co-promote that with the PBC the same way they did the Wilder versus Fury fights. If Terence Crawford and his promoter at the time were pushing to do it before Errol Spence Jr. becomes weight drained, becomes shot, before he gets into that car accident, if they were pushing to do it, who was against it?
Errol Spence? The PBC? Or did you miss all of those clippings, all of those quotes, where Errol said that Terence was on the wrong side of the street?
Where Errol said that he wanted to save Terence for last? So Errol had the opportunity to fight Terence sooner than later, and he chose to put it off. Put it off until the very last minute. Now what you want to do is make excuses for him, because he lost.
Talking about he was so obviously shot. He was so obviously weight drained. Spare me, you low-quality individual.
And your low-trust community. The word of someone like you means nothing. That's why when guys like you talk, nobody listens, because everybody knows you're full of shit. You're gonna open your mouth, but nothing productive, nothing truthful is going to come out.
You want to occupy the same spaces as a guy like me, who tries his best to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and you want to pretend that you're like me.
You're not.
I'm not in the business of making excuses for fighters that falter, but you are, because that's what you're doing now, and you're likely doing it because you're one of the ones who got it wrong. You're one of the ones who overestimated Errol Spence Jr.'s fighting ability, and it blew up in your fucking face.
Fuck you, James.
Fuck your lies. Fuck your bullshit. Your fucking excuse making. Fuck you.
Fuck that shit.
The problem with guys like you is, you don't know when to shut the fuck up. When to just shut the fuck up and listen to smarter people than you when we're talking.
You want to have your say. You want to put in your 2 cents. For what? So you can be fucking wrong and then make excuses for it afterwards?
Shut the fuck up, James.
Shut the fuck up and listen to people that know. Nobody was calling Errol Spence Jr. weight drained or punch drunk at the time. You fucking Spence tards were backing Errol Spence Jr. to not only beat Terence Crawford, but knock him out and collect his eye, like he collected Kell Brook's eye and your Dennis Ugas's eye. That's what you Spence tards were saying the week of the fight.
You backed this guy up until the very last minute, and you didn't decide that anything was wrong with him until well after the fight, when you had pie in your face and crow in your mouth.
Because you're a sore fucking loser, and that's really all there is to it. Just accept that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about most of the time, but you don't want to stop talking.
Accept it.
Stop trying to find ways to make yourself feel better that for 5 years, guys like you backed the wrong pony.
Stop crying about it already. You were wrong. Dead wrong. It's guys like me that were right, and I'm the guy you need to listen to, not James and all of his fucking bullshit.
It's quite enough about ancient history, addressing the recent story that Devin Haney will not be migrating to Zmufa Boxing after all, and he has instead inked a deal directly with DAZN. Boxing insider Rick Lacier said, Devin Haney has now done a deal directly with DAZN, just like Teofimo Lopez did. Haney's first fight is going to be versus his WBO mandatory challenger Keyshawn Davis. Haney picked the poison of his choice, Keyshawn, rather than fight Shakur. If Haney would have signed with Zuffa.
Go, Bevin!
So basically, DAZN threw Haney a choice, and that's Haney's out to avoid Shakur. There's no other conclusion than that one. And I don't blame Haney for ducking Shakur, as Shakur is almost impossible to beat. Haney has a better chance of beating Keyshawn, but it'll be a very good fight.
Is that the way it is? Because near as I can tell, it was the Haneys that were calling out Shakur and pressuring him to move up. Rick's version of it, he's saying they are avoiding Shakur.
That is his purview of what transpired. Veteran fighter turned analyst Timothy Bradley, he's got a very different account of events.
From what I was hearing, man, I'm telling y'all, man, something happened behind the scenes, and like I told you, they're saying that, hey, there's a possibility that he didn't like the fact that Shakur was going to actually make more money than him. That was told to me. Okay? Shakur was going to make more money than Devin Haney. I've also heard that the reason why he don't want to be with Zuffa also is because he didn't want to give up his rights. As you know, when you sign with Zuffa, you give up your rights. They have the likenesses of you as well, your sponsors, so on and so forth.
Timothy Bradley's version of it makes a lot more sense to me. What could have discouraged Devin Haney from signing to Zuffa? It might have been that Shakur was going to get more money than him, and it would have come with strings attached.
Signing with DAZN and working with them directly allows Devin his independence. Now, I think he would have made more money boxing on Zuffa than he's about to make boxing on DAZN.
I think Zuffa would have given him more money up front, because on DAZN, he's going to be relying on the antiquated pay-per-view model to make the bulk of his cash, and as we all know, boxing fans ain't buying pay-per-views as much as they used to. At Zuffa, they would have did his fight off pay-per-view on Paramount for guaranteed money up front. But he didn't like the deal. He didn't like that Shakur was going to make more money than him. I don't think it's the way Rick is saying it, that they were avoiding Shakur. How is that? They're the ones who were voluntarily calling him out.
Seemingly to avoid fighting Keyshawn. That was my purview. That's how it looked to me, that the moment that Keyshawn Davis came into the frame as his mandatory challenger, that's when they start calling out Shakur, because he's a naturally smaller fighter, because he just had his very first fight at 140, and he's got no fights at 147, because he's not as hard a puncher as a Keyshawn Davis.
Both fights come with risks attached, but you're under no threat of being knocked out by Shakur. With Keyshawn, you are.
And you can correlate the moment they start calling out Shakur to the moment that Keyshawn became his mandatory. To me, it looked like they were trying to avoid Keyshawn with Shakur.
So what would have made them change their mind? Taking the DAZN deal and working with them directly allows Devin Haney more wiggle room and more autonomy, which is what they're in it for.
Not just money, but agency.
He still gets to be on pay-per-view, so that potential is still there to make money if the pay-per-view has an upside. Beyond the Keyshawn Davis fight, there is the Ryan Garcia rematch. By staying on DAZN, where Ryan still technically fights, he is still within proximity of that rematch.
And not just that, there is also potentially facing the winner of the upcoming Teofimo Lopez versus Rolly Romero fight.
To fight anybody else, he would have had to drop the brown belt. In doing so, he would have lost a lot of leverage. Not being a world champion at this weight, with all of his demands, he would have fast become a member of the Who Needs Ya Club. If he chose to drop his brown belt, forego the Keyshawn Davis fight, to have the Shakur Stevenson fight.
Yeah, he needs that belt as a bargaining chip, because his marquee value is not such that he's grown bigger than the belt.
He hasn't. And so defending it against his mandatory challenger was the lesser of two evils, even if it is comparatively for less money, and it is.
What is Shakur Stevenson gonna do now? That is, what is Zuffa gonna do for him if they can't get him Bevin?
So I guess signing to Zuffa is not all it's cracked up to be, and that's something that they are going to have to deal with.
Now, as far as the fight between Devin and Keyshawn and who's gonna win it, Initially, I was leaning towards Devin to win it based on the styles. Pure boxers like Devin usually have the drop on boxer punchers like Keyshawn, but then I thought about it. Can Devin Haney really shake and bake Keyshawn Davis for 36 minutes without getting caught, without getting hit?
This is not a guy in his mid to late 30s like Regis Prograis or Jose Ramirez. Keyshawn Davis is not some slow-footed fighter. He's a young guy, fast guy, strong guy in his prime. And I get the sense that he can keep up with Devin Haney, keep the pressure on him. And this wasn't even me that said this. It was King Lopez, a friend of the channel, who pointed out, by now, Keyshawn Davis has likely sparred Shakur Stevenson
A pure boxer like Devin.
a million times. If the fight between them gets made, he'll spar him a million more to get ready.
Yeah, him and Shakur are bosom buddies.
In my purview, Shakur Stevenson is a better caliber, a better grade of pure boxer than Devin Haney. He's got more bells and whistles. So if you spar him ahead of the Haney fight, that's your ace in the hole. That's your secret weapon.
I've got Keyshawn. Roll on Keyshawn Davis versus Devin Haney because I like that fight better anyway. I don't like that it's likely going to be a pay-per-view.
Because that's what DAZN is doing, to spruce up their ultimate tier, but that's just something we're going to have to deal with when the time comes. I like the fight, I actually like it better than the Stevenson fight, and I'm leaning towards Keyshawn to win it.
Upstairs in the men's super middleweight division, former two-weight world champion Demetrius Andrade details how he refuses to wait for promoters.
Boy, the jokes just write themselves with this guy. He refuses to wait for promoters. I wasn't aware that the promoters were waiting for him. Demetrius Andrade's disappearance after his lone defeat to David Benavidez puzzled many boxing fans. Andrade was competitive despite giving away considerable size to a naturally bigger opponent, making it reasonable to believe he still had plenty left against fighters closer to his own weight. Instead, the former two-division champion spent nearly 3 years out of the ring before revealing that family hardships and promotional frustration is what kept him out of action. Andrade tomorrow returns against Douglas Atiede at the Mohegan Sun after a lengthy absence that began with family tragedy and ended with a decision to take control of his own career. I took time off because of family matters. My little brother got shot, got paralyzed, my mom, rest her soul. I took time to deal with family stuff, and maybe after like a year or so, I was eager to get back to the ring, but every time I reached out to the promoters to get something going, they would just be like, wait for the opportunity, wait for the opportunity. I'm like, what do you mean? Let's create the opportunity. Let's get things going. What are you waiting for? We need to make the opportunity ourselves, said Andrade to Chris Mannix on his channel.
Yeah, all of that sounds good in reality. What Andrade wanted was to be fast-tracked to the big fights with the big names having nothing to offer, and by now he should know it doesn't work like that.
So rather than continue waiting, Andrade partnered with New England promoter Jimmy Birchfield to launch his comeback. I'm not waiting anymore, so I teamed up with Jimmy Birchfield from Rhode Island. I'm a Rhode Islander too. He's one of the top promoters in this area. I was like, let's just do it. It made sense. Here we are today creating our own lane, creating our own opportunity, Demetrius said. Andrade admitted the inactivity became increasingly frustrating because he believed he was healthy enough to compete long before this week's return. I'm still young enough, still healthy, and I've still got love for the sport. Why do I have to keep waiting around for somebody to tell me, okay, it's your turn? I'm not doing that. I did that for 2 years, and it was getting frustrating. This is what I want to do. It's time to fight. Put me back in.
Back in the rankings.
There's no other option other than seeing Demetrius Andrade back in the mix.
He's already named Edgar Berlanga as a person of interest, somebody that he would like to fight beyond this weekend's fight. Coincidentally, they're both fighting this weekend. Demetrius on Friday, Edgar on Sunday.
But where Demetrius has his eyes on Edgar, Edgar's got his sights set on somebody else.
Chris Eubank Jr.
Edgar Berlanga wants a Chris Eubank Jr. fight in London by this December. Chris is still coming off that loss to Conor Benn in what was their rematch. I don't know that fight between them happens on that kind of schedule for Edgar. Edgar Berlanga isn't looking at Sunday's fight with Stephen Butler as the start of a long rebuilding process in his mind. It's the final stop before a December clash with Chris Eubank Jr. in London. If Berlanga gets the result that he expects, He wants Zuffa Boxing to move him directly into one of the biggest paydays at Super Middle. Berlanga's own comments show he is already focused beyond Sunday. People look at me. I'm the knockout guy, and fans love knockouts, but it's going to come. First round, second round, third round, it's going to come. Patience is everything in the sport. Having great IQ, using the jab. The knockout's going to come, like Floyd Mayweather told me. I've got dynamite in my hands, it's just about placing them the right way, said Berlanga to Pro Box TV.
Well, they matched him against the right guy to get a knockout, as Stephen Butler already has quite a few losses, and every single one of them came by way of knockout.
Butler is a great fighter, but I'm levels above him, and I'm gonna show that. My main focus is Butler, because if I don't get through him, everything we have planned is out the window. To be honest, nothing concerns me. I've just gotta follow the game plan. I've been in there with Canelo. There's nobody at 168 that tops that, and it's definitely not Butler. Going straight for Eubank makes total sense. His fights with Conor Benn turned him into one of Britain's biggest draws. Bringing him to the table will take some serious money from Zuffa, but Berlanga wants that stage now instead of taking another stepping stone fight. Everything now depends on Berlanga taking care of Butler on Sunday.
So obviously, Edgar Berlanga did not migrate over to Zuffa to box for anybody's alphabet titles, since there are none over there, least of all when he's targeting Chris Eubank Jr., of all people, who's still coming off that loss to Conor Benn. It makes it very obvious that Edgar's after the money, but so is Demetrius Andrade, because why else would he be looking at Edgar? Huh?
Chris Eubank Jr. is being targeted by Edgar Berlanga, and Edgar Berlanga is being targeted by Demetrius, though why? What does Demetrius stand to gain from boxing Edgar Berlanga?
Nothing, he ain't got no belt.
What I think he wants to do is use Edgar as a segue to get to Zuffa, to get signed to Zuffa, because he hears the same rumors and stories, the same gossips that we do, that right now, Zuffa is kicking out a lot of money to a lot of fighters to fortify their stable. So he wants to get in on that action. He figures by fighting Edgar and beating him, he can do that. The problem is,
what if Edgar doesn't want to fight him?
I don't know what, if any, dialogue Zuffa has already had with Chris Eubank Jr. I don't know if Chris is receptive to a fight with Edgar. I don't know if Edgar is receptive to a fight with Demetrius. It's all very immaterial right now, in the air, but the responsibility falls on Zuffa to get Edgar somebody to fight. So if you can't get him Chris, you might as well get him Demetrius.
You're the ones who wanted to sign this fucking bum. To fight as a super middleweight, not even having a super middleweight division, you have to look outside your own borders to get him opponents. So if you can't get him Chris, get him Demetrius.